Aloha. My name is Martina Queen, and as a member of this congregation, I welcome you to the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. I am your worship associate for this morning. We are a Unitarian Universalist community inspired by our principles, boldly growing compassion, justice, and joy. And as such, we are very, very busy. So if you would take a few moments to take a look at your order of service, there are a number of activities that might be of interest to you, and you are most certainly welcome to join in them. I want to make a special notice that we are celebrating our 60th anniversary, and Carla and Sally will be selling tickets for that after the service. So if you would see them to purchase your tickets. Also, at your convenience, 24/7, you can go onto the website, and at the top of the website, you'll see a little kind of round button that says donate. If you push that, you can also buy your tickets that way. And that's at unitariansofhi.org. We are a growing community, and if you are thinking about becoming part of this interesting group, there is a pathway to membership. The first step is to attend the informational meeting about our church, which is being held today at 12:15 in the Fred Harper Room. If you have any questions, please see me after the service. The fate of the earth urgently depends on humanity's ability to imagine and to build a world in which all human beings are treated justly and live to their fullest potential within a self-sustaining web of life. How do you imagine such an abundant world? What ethics, theology, or values fire that vision? This is a place to seek those answers and to act upon them, and you are welcome here.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first word. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the sweet rains new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness, where God's feet lie. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw plain. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
All Cat Stevens fans, I see. Please join in saying the chalice words this morning to light our chalice. We light this chalice with the embers of compassion. We light this chalice with the torch of justice. We light this chalice with the radiance of joy.
How about a story? Okay. Okay. What are these? Apples. Yes. Yum. These are apples. All right. Where do apples come from? Apple trees. Yeah. Here. Apples grow out of apple trees, right? Apple trees grow apples, right? Apple trees grow apples. All right. What are these? People. Yes. Just like us. These are people. Okay. Where do people come from? People trees. There's one over here in the corner. Yeah. Little hint. Yeah. People grow out of this planet, don't they? Most of the people I know come from this planet. Anyway, I've heard it said people come from moms, but moms are people. And from their moms, yeah. We're thinking about this, are moms people, yeah. Yeah. Think big. If moms are people, then where do people come from, right? People grow out of this planet. In other words, this planet grows people. And something grows planets too. Aha. We have a philosopher here. We probably have several philosophers here. You're right. So we could say, couldn't we? Couldn't we say that this planet grows people in just the same way that apple trees grow apples? It's perfectly natural. This is what they do. In fact, this planet grows all kinds of interesting things in addition to people. Huh? Yeah, okay. Which means, of course, that we're perfectly natural here. This is our home. We grow out of this planet. We're not stuck on this world like boogers on a wall or something. Most of us. We live here. This is our home. We grow out of this planet. Okay, if you want to grow healthy apples, what do? Oh my. You take care of the trees. If you want to grow healthy apples, you better take care of your apple trees. And you better take care of your orchards. Okay? So, if you want to grow healthy people, what do? Take care of each other, take care of yourself, and take care of this planet. Because this planet grows people. If the planet is sick, what's it going to grow? Huh? Okay, very good. No fooling you guys. There it is. Thank you very much. The end.
Let us send them out with joy. Can we make a bridge as they go up to their classrooms? Here we go. You shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. There'll be shouts of joy, and all the trees of the field will clap, will clap. Okay, get ready to clap. And all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Trees of the field shall clap their hands. Trees of the field shall clap their hands.
This week, Mother Earth has been awakened to two tragic events. And so this morning we come together as the beloved community, as a community that shares our pain with one another, to commemorate the tragic events that took place on Monday in Boston, as well as that which took place the next day in West Texas with the explosion of a fertilizer plant. And we try to make sense of these tragic events and take a look at how such acts of violence can take place. And it's difficult for us to fathom how disconnected we are from one another and how we could cause so much suffering, and how so much of human life could be so fragile. And so, as a religious community, all we could do is come together in a spirit of peace and in a spirit of solidarity, knowing that this event has hit really close to home for us. The headquarters of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations is a few blocks away from the Boston Marathon. And there are members of our congregation who have family and friends that live in that area. And so we come together to honor the lives of those who suffered from this tragic event, and to offer our grieving to one another, and to offer our empathy and sympathy with one another. And as we do so, I'd like to invite Karen to please light our peace candle for us. We normally light this at the beginning of the month, but I thought this would be an appropriate opportunity for us to once again shed peace on the world through our light. And will you join me in reading these words, please? We light this candle that all beings may be peaceful and happy, that all beings may be safe and secure, that all beings may be healthy and prosperous, that all beings may live joyfully and with ease. And we also come this morning bringing our own personal sorrows and our own personal concerns. We lift up this morning Rick Myro, a good person who is still looking for the light. And when my hand moves across the sanctuary, I invite you to name others that you would like to lift up this morning. For these names that we speak aloud and those we hold in the depths and sanctuary of our hearts, we come together in a spirit of prayer and mindfulness. And at the same time, we also know that life brings about many joys. And part of the joy that has been shared is that from Dorothy and Phil Morris, who just celebrated their 44th anniversary on Friday, April the 19th. If there are any other names that you would once again like to lift up, I invite you to do so as my hand moves across the sanctuary one more time. And now I invite you to lift up your left hand, once again symbolizing the sorrows, the pain, and the concerns that we have in this community. And I invite you to lift up your right hand, symbolizing the joy. May these two hands come together in a spirit of gasho. And gasho means palms together. As our palms come together, we realize how closely intertwined joy and sorrow is. And as we bow to one another, we honor and respect the divinity in each of us, the divine spark that we have. And together, may we be the agents of change that we seek in our world. May we be the agents of peace. May we be the agents of hope and reconciliation. And may we now release our hands, knowing that as we move forward on this journey of life, we will encounter more joys and more sorrows along the way. As Karen mentioned earlier, today we do indeed celebrate Earth Day and what it means to live in an abundant world. And it's often hard for us to think that we have such an abundant earth whenever we're faced with destruction, whenever we're faced with threats of annihilation, and whenever we're faced with threats of ecological destruction. And the story didn't always begin this way. As many of us know, most religious traditions have some tale or another about what Eden looked like or what paradise looked like. I love that opening song by St. Cat Stevens that talks about that first dew that fell on the earth and on the grass, and how beautiful that moment must have been. Everything was pristine, the air was so crisp, and the water was so clean, and there was indeed enough food for everyone and enough sunshine shining on all of us to share. And if that's a description of Hawaii, so be it. This is probably why we're called paradise, yeah? And yet we've noticed that somehow or another, that story has been distorted over the years, and that there have been other mythologies that have taken its place, which was probably why John Milton penned a wonderful piece called Paradise Lost, and which is probably why Joni Mitchell, when she came up with the song Big Yellow Taxi back in the 1970s, talked about they paid paradise and put up a parking lot. How many of you knew that that was actually about the Hilton Hawaiian, no, not the Hilton Hawaiian Village. I'm sorry, Carla. It was actually about the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. Is it the Royal Hawaiian? Yeah, the Royal Hawaiian. It's the Pink Hotel, yeah? And so they paid paradise and put up a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging hotspot. Remember the lines to Big Yellow Taxi? Am I the only one who knows the song? And this was even way before my time. Come on, people. St. Joni Mitchell. And so what has happened to paradise? And how did we lose Eden? Why has the story suddenly become one of scarcity? That somehow we don't even have enough fossil fuel past 2016 or something like that in Dubai, and who knows whenever else we're going to run out of oil to fuel our cars and to fuel our manufacturing plants. When did this story take place? And why is it that we have to bottle everything up, all our food products up, in order for there to be supposedly enough resources to go around? Ever find it odd that they even try to sell oxygen back to you these days? Ever gone to an airport or a mall where they have these oxygen shops where you could actually inhale flavored oxygen? What's up with that? Scarcity. That seems to be the dominant story and the dominant theme these days, which kind of makes me wonder if John Milton had it right, that fall from grace was just about disobedience to God. What about disobedience to nature? And what about our destruction and disrespect to that which gives us life and that which feeds us, as Steve pointed out earlier? So today I want to talk about this, not necessarily to give you more doom and gloom, because I believe that you've heard enough of that. Al Gore made a wonderful documentary a few years ago called An Inconvenient Truth, and there's been several others. Our Social Justice Sundays, you do a wonderful job of exposing just how sustainable our economy, for example, has become. And I find it interesting that we're forced to choose between the environment and the economy. Why can't we have both and? Why can't we have a viable economy and a viable environment? Don't you think that's possible? Amen. Yeah, that's right, Martina. I'm glad you're with me on this. More and more people should be awakened to this reality that we need to go back to that original story, and we need to go back and try to find where paradise is. And I'll have you know that someone actually beat me to it. How many of you have seen a documentary on PBS called Eden's Lost and Found? None of you. I wouldn't have either unless, were it not for the fact that I was bored a couple evenings ago and I was flipping through my Netflix queue and I was typing in Earth, and lo and behold, this documentary comes up. And this documentary actually gives me a lot of hope, because we tend to think of big cities as places where It's overcrowded, and it's the dirty slums, and it's just not a very pretty picture. One would never think that there could be hope and inspiration for environmental sustainability in a big city. But this documentary throws that theory out of the water because it talks about a city like Chicago, for example, where the mayor at the time, Mayor Richard Daley, finally had enough political will to say that I want to make Chicago a sustainable place and a nice environment for people to live in and raise their families in. And so you know what he did? He turned the roof of City Hall into a pretty garden. You would never have been able to tell that that was right in the middle of Chicago, downtown Chicago, if the camera didn't pan back and show that it was actually inside a building. And Chicago was also the place where they turned an airport back into a public park, which was actually the original intention of the architect of the city of Chicago. Isn't that interesting? And you can't even imagine the amount of controversy that caused to turn an airport into a park. And the documentary also talks about other cities like Philadelphia and even Los Angeles, California, where there's currently traces and signs of hope, such as the LA River, for example, parts of it being turned back into estuaries so that the birds and the egrets could make a nest and grow their family there again. And there was even a joke by the end of this segment that maybe in the future, people in Los Angeles are going to commute by kayak down the LA River. And wouldn't that be a lot faster than sitting in the parking lot called the 405 freeway? Those of you who have ever been to LA will know what I'm talking about, yeah? Doesn't that give you signs of hope? And more recently, when I went to San Jose a couple weeks ago, I noticed as our plane was about to land that there were solar panels all across the roof of the parking structure. That, to me, gives me a lot of hope. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going on all over the world. You could find stories about how Seoul, Korea is engaging in these efforts to revitalize and renew even their downtown area. And Lima, Peru, the list goes on and on. There's so many places that we could draw hope from. What about here in Honolulu? What can we do to make our city, how can we make Waikiki more sustainable? That's the question that I raised for us. So instead of being so obsessed with this bumper sticker that many of you have probably seen, keep the country country, how can we keep the city city? Anybody want to put that on their bumper sticker? Let's start a movement, shall we? Let's start a campaign. How can we make our cities more revitalized and more thriving? And that's broken English, isn't it? More thriving? How can we keep our cities thriving and vibrant and economic and environmentally sustainable? That's the challenge I have for us. And I believe that that has to come from a spiritual place, that we need not just the political will to do it, because this isn't just about lobbying our legislators to pass these bills or resolutions that would make our INA more sustainable, but it's also about having the spiritual will to do it. Because you know what? The solutions, I believe, have to come from deep inside of every single one of us. Because that's where the problem came from to begin with. Ever notice that the problem of scarcity also leads to a problem of violence? Because then we start thinking that there's only enough for me and my people and my country, and there's not enough for you all out there. So sucks to be you, as long as we have our share, then who cares about what you have, yeah? And that has oftentimes caused wars and violence and this destructive behavior that we've had that has ruined our environment. And so the first principle is to find out, I believe, how we can live more simply. So that's the first spiritual solution that I'm proposing. And again, I realize that we're all bright and intelligent people, and we could probably come up with at least 1 million possible solutions on how to address the ecological disaster that we could potentially face, yeah? And indeed, there have been a lot of solutions that have been proposed, but I think a lot of them actually deal with more of the symptoms or rather than the root cause of the issue. Does that make sense? That I believe that oftentimes we just kind of look at, well, what little things can we do? For example, I love that whole campaign, the Triple R campaign. How many of you have heard of that? Reduce, reuse, recycle, yeah? So that's wonderful that we're engaging in that. But if we really took a look at the root of it, where does it all come from? So I believe that if we went back and just lived a more simple lifestyle, that maybe these actions could lead to a more sustainable world. So what do I mean by this? Well, as you may have noticed, we're a bit thinner crowd here this morning, and that's because 70 or 80 members of our congregation are actually out enjoying themselves out at Camp Mokuleia. And Camp Mokuleia is this place on the North Shore, if you've never been to it. It's wonderful. It's got turtles and the beauty of nature all around it. And what I've noticed going there this time around is that they've taken steps to make the camp itself more sustainable. So they've installed photovoltaics all across the roof of the camp. And yesterday, Travis Idle, a friend of our congregation, and he's also a preacher before, took us on a tour around the camp to show us where their compost bins are, where they're recycling things, and where they're growing things so that they could actually serve them in the cafeteria. So the food that they grow, they're serving back in the cafeteria. So the goal of this is to have a net zero waste, right? So that even the waste gets recycled, and a net zero energy consumption. So even their water use, they have these catchments that catch the water from the roof, and it flows right on down back to water the plants. Isn't that quite ingenious? And they have a way, too, of recycling the gray water, although I probably shouldn't mention that because I think that's still illegal here in Hawaii. So I'm sure, Roland, you'll edit that out of the video. But nonetheless, it's a creative solution to making the camp run itself practically, yeah? And so for me, that gives me a lot of hope. And it makes me think, how can we too live our lives more simply? What can we get rid of, or what's not an absolute necessity in our lives that we don't absolutely need that we could perhaps cut back on? And the second thing that came to my mind, and the second spiritual concept or notion that I thought about, is the idea that what if we were just to follow the middle way? Because I know sometimes it's about extremes. So I'm not asking you to quit cold turkey in terms of the habits that you've grown to love, such as driving a car or whatnot, or in my case, it's traveling. I don't know how many thousands of miles I've logged in, and that kind of makes me feel a little guilty about all the carbon footprint that I have on our planet. But for me, I kind of rationalize it by saying, well, I drive a Prius when I'm on land. And so that helps offset my carbon footprint, right? Since I'm too cheap to actually click that button that says, I'm willing to pay a few extra more bucks for this plane ticket if you'll donate it to an environmental cause. Ever notice that? Do your airlines have that button on it? All right, well, that exists, right? And that's fine too. But for me, it's all about finding the middle path. How can I balance my life around, and how can I juggle things so that it becomes a both-and perspective? And to tell you the truth, I almost titled today's sermon, Abundant Eggplant. Because recently, I discovered that I could actually have a green thumb, that everything grows here in Hawaii without much effort. And it doesn't even take me actively trying to kill the plant in order for it to grow. And so what I've discovered is that we have this eggplant that I just bought at Home Depot for $4 that has been producing flowers and actual eggplants week after week. Enough, in fact, to feed our entire staff. Every Tuesday, I bring an eggplant dish to the staff, which makes it kind of boring. And so the staff always asks, oh God, what kind of eggplant dish is Jonathan making this time? But is it good? Yeah. Well, thank you, Karen. You'll get a raise. Thank you for saying that. All right, the dollar figure keeps going up. Is it super, super good? And so even in my own backyard, I experienced this abundant eggplant. But for me, in order to vary my diet a little bit, I still go shop at Foodland Farms. I still go to farmer's market whenever I can. So it's all about trying to find out areas in your life that you could use a little bit of this and a little bit of that in order to make it more sustainable. And so, rather than this being a heavy-duty sermon, sometimes I tend to think of those environmental justice sermons as, God, this is so depressing. This is just going to sink me into despair. And somebody hand me a razor blade already so I could slit my wrist. I'm so depressed over what's happening in our world. Rather than making it that kind of sermon, I'm hoping that this will inspire you and give you glimmers of hope as to how you can go back to your home and how you could reanalyze your lifestyle and think to yourself, how can you live more simply? How can you malama aina? How can you care for our land, care for our earth, so that we are all engaging in a process that would make us healthier and would help build a more peaceful world? All right, so that's the challenge going forth this morning. May it be so.